and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. It's how we get the word out about what we do. This guy here is David. You see him working hard already. David and I just met. He actually started a life insurance company that became Velocity Insurance Incorporated about 5 years ago. Sold it to Integrity, which he's actually a partner with also. So interesting how all that all ties out. And Integrity is a life, health, and wealth company that uses technology, data, and human touch to deliver a better insurance and financial services experience. They're a massive company out of Texas. He also does Airbnb, Family Guy, big into 75 Hard, all the things. Welcome to the show, David.
Well, thanks, Angel. It's always an honor to connect with people in our group in Arte and obviously to meet you. And yeah, so excited to be with you today and answer some questions and touch people's lives any way I can and inspire people. So same
Awesome.
thing.
Well, let's get into things. What got you into life insurance?
I've been in the insurance probably over 20 years, different facets of it. I actually started knocking on doors and selling cancer policies, accident policies. That's how I kind of made a name within the industry, if you will. And then with the life side, I always wanted to make money. Like I wanted to serve people, I wanted to make a difference in people's lives, but I wanted to get paid quick. So my vision of life insurance was, hey man, like back in the day where you pull up and you got the guy getting out of the car with a briefcase going up the house, and it takes forever to get a policy paid. And so, but when I found out about simplified issue, I spoke to one of my mentors. He was younger than me, but like he had made more in the industry than I had, and so I connected with Andrew Taylor, who's also an integrity partner, and at that time came over here at the end of 19 and sold it first, right? Figured it out. Went to convention in 2020, and that was kind of the start of the life insurance business, if you will. But I came out of that convention being a praying man, it's just, I knew, I looked at my wife, I was like, this is the place he wants us. And we just propelled very fast, went all in with this company and built a massive agency. Therefore, 2.5 years later, we were in a position to, with the EBITDA and everything, to be purchased by a company like Integrity. So it was a blessing for sure.
Awesome. Let's go back to knocking doors. What got you doing that, and how did you deal with the rejection?
Great question. My first, I, again, back to insurance again, sold accident policies starting out door to door and
And how
what,
old would you have been then?
27.
Okay, yeah, you're young. Okay.
27 years old. And the reason I did it was because he told me accident policy. I'm like, who wouldn't buy this? Like, he didn't know
Everyone needs it.
I had 5 cuts across my forehead before I was 5 years old. My mom said I took a step and I never stopped running, which is true. Four sport letterman, all that stuff, ran fast, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, so I knew that if I believed in it, other people would, right? So, but when I got into insurance, I looked at that time as residuals. Like that was something that interested me at that time, like which I still do today. Anybody wants repetitive income, right? But at that time, residuals, like I didn't know, I couldn't sing, so I wasn't going to get money there. I wasn't going to act, so I wasn't going to get money from there. Those are the two ways I knew you could make residual income at that time. But insurance was another one. And I also believe God called me to, make a difference in people's lives, build a legacy, and those things all added up with the insurance world. Making a difference in people's lives matters to me. And so it was just a fit, and I learned early on in that business. I remember the first day I got a door slammed in my face, but I looked at the guy training me and I said, it's on, right? And Angela, I'm the kind of person that I'm very competitive, but I also know if you can do it, I can do it. Like, give me the same blueprint and I can go do it, right? And I've always believed that. If this person does 10 presentations, I'll do 20, whatever it takes. That's how I've always built in my mind. So it wasn't necessarily about talent. I mean, I think you build those skills as you go, but at the same time, if I outwork you in a lot of cases, I'm going to win. And that was what happened there. Matter of fact, later on, just a quick story, one of the guys that trained me told my boss, I didn't find out till like a year later, he goes, yeah, I told him the first couple of days, I said, I was just going to slow you down. So, and I, kind of grew up through that company and, then kind of went from there. So.
What got you into that, and where do you think that mindset came from as a child? How were you raised? Is that where you felt that whole like outworking when you have kids or your siblings, I should say, super competitive? Like, where did that come from?
You mentioned something earlier. We were talking about catalysts in the life, and it just kind of hit me to think of that because my father passed away in 2022. Okay. I didn't know this while my dad was living, which made for a strained relationship. Not, it wasn't like terrible. We just didn't, we were different people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But my dad came back from the war. So what I found out, going back and looking at that, I saw my dad go out of the house working hard every day. That's what I saw, right? My
Mhm.
mom worked in the home, watched kids. She was a loving person, caring person. She was the one that donated to the church, which I learned that from her. And
Mhm.
tell dad, you have what you have because of her, right? Because she's taking some of that money and giving it back, and look what's happening. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I always wanted him to feel what it was like to give and not. It's just his upbringing. Anyway, so he came back really, I guess, with post-traumatic stress disorder. And nowadays time, think about it, he came home, saw me because I was born. He was in Vietnam. He went back over there for like a year and then came back, had to come back again. And what I found out upon his death, so when we were growing up, he would ask me if I'd wash my hands. So we had a different kind of a stress. Like, did you wash your hands? He'd ask you 3 times at dinner. You had to lie to him sometimes because even if you did, he wasn't going to believe you anyway. If you were my friend and coming over, he'd want to know where your dad worked. Did he work in a factory? You couldn't come in the house. Like, so we dealt with a lot of that OCD stuff that was real. It was
Mhm.
a very high level. You'd find napkins on the doors. But one thing I learned from him was just watching him go to work every day. And then he also started side businesses like insurance. Like he did some of that and he did
Mhm.
this. He was always talking about that as I grew up. And but what I found out though, at his funeral, and I'm like, God, I wish I would have told me this now. I'm not trying to be emotional, but my dad saw dead bodies and had to tag them. So I understand why he was the way he was, right? But no one knew. I don't think my mom even knew. Like, I'm not sure he talked about it, but his brothers knew and they told me. And so, in some other ways, he was about money. He was very tight, which is fine. I'm not saying give money, but he was just for me, I want to build something. I want to be able to help my kids if need be. I'm not saying you got to give them the world because they need to go work for it. I'm just saying I'm not working for just me. I'm working for legacies and being able to serve people. And
Mhm.
my dad was very tight with it. I didn't understand that. But when he was a child, they had six siblings. He had 6 siblings. They had a house that was five. I think my grandfather paid 5 grand and worked 3 jobs. So my dad did the same. And they also told me that even though I saw him work, they said even as a 18-year-old, 17-year-old, he was working 3 jobs. Like he was the hardest worker in their family. And I saw it, but I
That's where you
didn't
got it
know
from.
that degree. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So your giving came from your mom and your hard work came from your dad.
Right.
Makes a
That's right.
lot of sense. That's awesome. So, and then, as you continued, you got into personal development. When did you start into that journey?
Well, so in my early 20s, I mean, again, had some positive influence, obviously, with the church and, obviously being an athlete. I mean, you had great coaches and stuff growing up. I was always doing something for sport letterman. I mean, my mom, all she did was run me to sports, whatever it was I was doing at the time. So there's that piece. Early 20s, I got in the Amway business actually. And while I was uh, a father with 2 young kids, I wanted to keep my wife at home. So I was working a full-time job. I was building that 7 nights a week to build a business. And I was tossing newspapers in the middle of the night. So when I got into insurance and the guy said to me, if you work 40, 50 hours a week, you'll be successful. I said, what do I do with the other 40? He looked at me like I was crazy. But see, I was used to working all the
All the
time.
time.
And so like when I went out and going back to what I said, out working you, dude, I'm gonna put 10 more hours in you in the next 2 days. Why? Because that's just what I do. Like, you know, I don't know if that answers your question, but in the Amway business, we just got
You
a
need the
lot
personal
of
development.
books and stuff like that. Yeah. I did it for 5 years and I look back on it and it kept me in a good place for 5 years. You know what I mean? Until I could figure things out. We
So
built a nice.
you had two young kids in your 20s
Yeah,
also.
20, I think I was
Wow.
22, 23 when I had my first two. And then, of course, I went through a divorce after 18 years. My wife now, like we say, is, what do you call it, in the word, equally yoked, if you will. We actually were going through divorces literally 50 feet apart. She'd been married 20, me 18. There's so many similarities in the situation that blow your mind. But we all both had 2 sets of girls that were 16 and 20 at the time. So you can't make that up either. We have 4 of them. We have 6 grandkids now. Yeah, we started young. So
So if you look back at that point where you were raising kids, and you were working so much, would you do anything different then? If you look back, like as the person you are now to then, would you maybe worked less to spend more time with the family, or do you think that was any kind of hiccup?
not really at that time, because I was still there in the middle of the night to change diapers. I was still there early in the morning to give a bottle, and they weren't five, you know what I mean? But what I was able to do because of that hard work is as they got to be, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, those, and then went to grade school, I was the dad at lunch. I was the dad coaching soccer if I had to, you know what I mean? So my girls to this day are, I'm who they have, you know what I mean? Because their mom's not
You did
so,
prioritize a lot of family.
yeah, I did. I did.
Good, good.
Um, yeah, I made sure that it was
Unusual.
very,
That's why I was asking,
very,
because with that kind of drive, like a lot of times people don't.
yeah, I was purposeful. I remember when I was going through the divorce, I mean, I gave up golf. And people were like, why'd you do it? Well, lots of reasons. I was terrible at it, but I was trying to learn. I was like, I'm not going to do this until I was through my bag now. So I'm not doing this till I get lessons. I'm just not I'm too competitive. Um, but the other reason was it was going to take, a 6, 8 hour day and my kids needed me. So it was going to the pool with them or, coaching soccer or being with them during that time was more important than that, and so I was very purposeful with that. Even when I was dating, I didn't really bring a lot of people around until I knew there was a situation there. But I was a single dad for 5 years. So raising two teenagers, girls basically, and then was blessed to run into my wife now. We've been together for, see, we've been married 10, right at 10, and been together almost 12. So yeah.
And so I mean, when we started, when he got on, by the way,
Yeah.
he's on this walking thing and doing his thing. So he's heavy into personal fitness and 75 hard. Tell us a little bit about that journey and why it's so important to you.
Well, the 75 hard, I've always been into fitness, but Andy's message in the book, I mean, I remember reading his book to my wife a couple years ago and learning about Andy's story and all that was fascinating. I actually grew up in St. Louis till I was 12, 13, so there's that connection too, which is kind of crazy. And I'd listen to Ed too, but so that just made me do it a few times over the last couple of years. As a matter of fact, I just had neck surgery this past year, and I went through 14 years of a lot of pain. It's amazing what you can actually put yourself through. And you don't even realize because it changed my life. Like I don't have all these pains. Like man, just picking up a bag and carrying it was hard. Like so fitness is so important. I think that's the one thing about it is I've learned that number one, it's hard to break yourself, but you can. But just because you're a little hurt, I mean, you just kind of keep moving, man. You'll know when it's time to stop if you need to. Um, my wife has to monitor that sometimes. I've done Spartan races. I haven't done one in a couple years because of the injuries, but now I'm ready to go do one again, right? I went through a Spartan race with a partially torn wrist. My hand was purple. Why? Because I can deal with the pain. Like I wasn't going to die. So it's all those things and listening to those guys and the things they've been through. It's like, this, you went through stuff. We all have. Like, it's like we all have a story, right? And we all have a story that I believe is a path that every time I go through something hard, it's allowing me to learn from that experience so I can pass along to somebody else. That's how I look at it now. Maybe when I was going through it when I was younger, I didn't see that, but now I do. And 75 hard kind of teaches you that too, because you're going through hard stuff. And so, hey, when somebody pulls out in front of you, okay, pull it out in front of you, let's keep moving. You know what I mean? Same thing, Spartan did the same thing. So, but I just think health is so important. I'm not saying you got to get up at 5 o'clock like I do. However, um, if I don't get up at that time, I did four for like 2.5 years. I backed it up a little bit. But I just think there's just so many good things you can do in the morning before everybody else wakes up. Pray, read, getting your fitness in, things like that. So it's super important. And if you haven't done 75 hard, I would challenge you to do it if you're watching this. It can change your life.
Cool. I like that. Yes, definitely try it at least once. And see
And
where it goes. Like for different people, it
my
does definitely
my
does
wife
different
doesn't
things.
like it because she has to wash so many clothes. It's
What'd
just
you
like,
say?
no, no, no. Because you wear, you're working out twice, plus you got your work stuff, right? So like she washes the clothes. She's like, oh no, no, not that again. But I've done it several times, so she knows she's gonna have to wash double if I do that. But I still tend to work out twice a day. She just doesn't know it. Like, I'm walking here or there, and I'll go home. We have a rowing machine and
Just
stuff.
not sweating and
Yeah,
freaking
it's just not
dirty.
like intentional. Like I'm going out here in the
Right.
snow. You know what I mean? But I still
Right.
do it. I'm afraid of it. So.
What's a couple things that you think people um don't do that they should do? I hate the word should, they could do to become successful. What are What are a couple tips if someone's listening to this or young entrepreneur, they want to be successful at whatever it is? What are some things that they could implement right away that you feel would help them become successful at whatever they're doing?
Well, I think the right intention with everything you're doing is important. I think having a schedule, having a schedule, those disciplines, creating discipline is everything to me. It's funny because I was listening to Ed's podcast just the other day, and he was talking about laying his clothes out, and I've been doing that. And I may have heard him say it years ago. I don't know. But I talk about that. I'm like, dude, I lay my clothes out the night before. It triggers my brain. I know I'm getting up, and it's just like I create that habit. Just like I brush my teeth, I put my contacts in, get my clothes, and things. So I think creating that discipline in the areas of their life that they're lacking, like if they're not in the gym, that's an exercise that I do. I sure have all my stuff lined up, ready to go the next day, so it makes for an easier morning to move in and out of the place. So I think having that intention to plan. And then like Andy talks about, like the task, like you can't get 20 things done in a day, but you can get five. And those five things matter. Like, what are the five things I prioritize that day that I have to get done? And if it's a hard thing, then do it first, get it out of the way, and then keep moving. And so those are some things. I think you have to get up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning to be successful? No, but I do think you should have health in your because I think it starts there. Because if we don't have our health, we don't have our energy, you can only work so much, right? So you want to have that energy later in the day to get things done at 9, 10 o'clock if you have to, whatever the case may be. And if you're not working out and you're eating a bunch of junk, that's going to be harder to do to perform as an entrepreneur in this world today, for sure.
Good. On the days you don't feel like getting up, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
That's a great question. Because there's a lot of days, right? Andy
I'm
talks
sure,
about
I'm sure more if you think back, like as you get disciplined, it just becomes a habit. But
it. Does.
before that, especially as you build a habit, on the days you don't want to, what's something someone can think about possibly that might work for them?
Well, accountability, and I think the accountability is to yourself first, right? But it can also be to someone else. Like I have people that work with me and they know I'm going to be in the gym. I had one of them ask me, "Did you go to the gym?" I look at them, what do you think I did? Of course I did, right? So, and also for me, it was an intentional thing to post that every morning because it attracted some people, right? But for me, it's like I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. Yesterday, I could hardly walk. My knee was jacked up, right? Now, I know why. I was in the gym hard for 6 straight days because of the weather, which I hate, by the way. That's a whole nother story. I couldn't get there and they were closed. So I had to figure it out. But going hard for 6 straight days where there was no break on a Wednesday or Saturday, which I normally would have, or Wednesday or Sunday, where I'm not in the gym, got to me. And so I did not want to go, but I knew there was two people were going to be there. And so when I got up and could hardly walk, that's a true story. I went anyway. Matter of fact, I did two leg exercises. I just didn't overdo it. I did half the weight I normally do. Then I went to my chiropractor. He's a genius. I had him do the 10 unit on my knee, and guess what? I'm good. I'm good today. It was just some swelling around my knee because I've had surgery and I've had some issues with it, but yeah, I kept moving. But I remember thinking if I didn't show up, I give them an excuse not to. And I'm trying to change their lives. One of the guys has lost 60 pounds since he's worked for me. Well, he expects me to be there, like, you know what I mean? So I don't know if that, but my whole thing it gets me up. I think I told you this earlier. I want to make a difference in people's lives. And I want to, the minute that I don't think I'm making a difference, that I'm out of whatever I'm doing because it doesn't make sense anymore. Because that's what drives me, talking to you, pouring into you, talking to whoever it is. If I feel like I can make a difference in one person's life, then that matters to me.
I like that accountability. Who can you use for accountability so that if you don't get out of bed, um, you could be hurting someone else, and sometimes that works really well. So that's a great tip. I love it. Anything else that you think people need to do in order to build discipline? What are some tips? You talk about being disciplined, but people aren't necessarily naturally disciplined. Some people are, some people aren't. But if someone isn't naturally disciplined, what do you feel they can do to help build discipline in certain areas?
Oh, another great question. You know, for me, I mean, listening as much positivity as I can throughout the day, reading books are also an added thing because it programs our brain to do those things. So like reading the 75 Hard, listening to Andy Frisell, listening to Ed Milet, listening to those kind of guys, keeps you motivated, keeps you focused a little bit. I do that while I work out. I don't listen to music. I listen to those guys. There's Boudreaux's Cool Again. There's other ones I listen to, but I have podcasts I listen to all the time, and I share it with my guys too. There's that piece, but it's like if you don't brush your teeth, that's not good. And I'll give you an example of how routine I am. Okay. I literally came in this office, Angela, this week, no contacts in, hadn't taken my vitamins or anything. Do you know why? Because my habits are and my discipline is I get up, I go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, contacts in, clothes on that are laying on the floor in my closet, go to the gym. Well, guess what? Couldn't do it a couple days, couldn't get out of the driveway. My Porsche, if you will, I wasn't taking it out in the ice. We had we just had a tough time getting out of where we were, ice and stuff. And so I couldn't go to the gym. Therefore, my brain says, well, I don't have to get up at 5. I can get up 5:36, whatever, still go downstairs, still get what I need to get done. And so I did that. Like I took a little bit of a hour more sleep, which I
Hmm.
probably needed. Okay.
Hmm.
But my routine was all jacked up. So I think it starts there. Start with a routine, say, look, I'm going to do this, this, and this, plan it out ahead of time. And that's what I do. Like the night before I decide, right? I'm going to the gym. I lay my clothes out, have all those things in structure in place. It's just like if you're going to a baseball game or whatever, you're wearing a certain thing, you probably are so excited. You're like, you got it out the night before, right? Or, if you played sports, you probably had those same habits. That's why I love athletes working with them because there is a lot of discipline usually with an athlete that played a sport. You know what I mean? So I love working with that type of person because a lot of that I don't have to teach them. You know what I mean? They have that kind of discipline. But you got to just start somewhere, and creating good habits is where it starts. And that's how you get discipline, right?
Yeah. Have you ever been one of those people that hit snooze?
Never,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah,
never.
so it's
I
hard
have
to
a, I
give
have a
some
noise
tips.
maker that goes off, and sometimes I don't hear it, right? So she has one, I have one, because it helps me sleep. As soon as it goes off, a lot of times, though, to be honest with you, my brain is such that I'd say at least 50% of the time, as soon as it goes off, I just jump up, right?
So discipline is not a thing for you. Really, it's a natural habit of yours. What's something that you've really had to work on, David, in order to become successful? That's not it.
Wow.
I know for me, it was leadership. What's
Yeah,
something for you
there's a
that was it?
lot. I mean, I think for me, leadership has always been in my world has been leading from the front, which I don't have an issue with, or showing up early or outworking you and things like that. But that's definitely something as far as the um dude, I think I care too much sometimes. So I think I give more than I should sometimes. Maybe not have the right conversations. I'm kind of like Ed, if you listen to his story, he talks about that. He has a hard time with some of those things. It's just you can care too much sometimes or want things for other people more than they want themselves. So I think I have to be better with my time and making sure I'm investing the right amount of time in the right individuals who really want that to do what I'm doing versus wasting time with people who don't. So I would say that's definitely an area I need to work on, which is part of leadership, right? It's part of growing a company or whatever is getting better in those areas. So I think that's something I would.
Have you ever struggled with like, because this is something I know Ed did when he first started with us.
Mhm.
In his first 4 years, he blew everyone he recruited out of the water because he was very, very, very direct. Because he was so driven and disciplined, he expected everyone else to do the same. Was that something you've ever struggled with? And if so, how have you worked through it?
Yeah, it is. To this day, it's hard. Because everybody's not like us, or maybe they want to be, and maybe they don't want to be. And I think it's just figuring it out. So that's a hard one, man. I think there's that struggle of how much do I love, how much do I push, kind of thing. I think you have to earn that right too. I mean, I can push somebody who knows I love them, right? The person who doesn't know that I love them, but starting to get to know me, I got to watch how hard I push them, or like you said, you'll blow them out. So, but I think it's just setting the right example, and if you do it long enough in front of them, hopefully they'll pick it up. But that's what I would say. I'd say if your habits are consistent and you do what you say you're going to do, they see that matters, right? So for me, I think it's that. I think it's just trying to pull some people along with you, but not everybody's going to come.
Awesome. Well, that was definitely something I'd have worked on. So I'm glad that wasn't quite as hard for you. Awesome. Well, in wrapping up, I have three questions that I always ask, and then anything that we didn't touch on that we want to leave for our listeners.
For
So
sure.
first and final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
Wow. That's a good one. 1 cent. You got some great questions, and ones I'd rather think about a little bit more. Um, for me, it was, I mean, prayer. I would say take some quiet time, reflect on, what God's put on your heart in those moments. It might be one or two things, but one will probably really hit you. So start listening. For me, that's what I got to do. I got to listen. And once I realized that I think I was put on this earth to inspire others, I was thought I was called to preach at one point. He's given me a platform where I still get to talk about God and inspire people to be better in their everyday lives and their marriages and different things. And so that's what I want. I want to know that when I meet somebody, I've made them, hopefully made a difference in them being a better husband, father, whatever, daughter, whatever, business person, Christian, whatever it might be, the best I can. So, give my best every day. So I don't know if that's a long answer to a question, but I guess you dig in with God and figure out what you're called to do.
Awesome. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
Oh, wow. uh, wow. I don't use a lot of quotes. I mean, I obviously write them down. I'm not great at memorying something I've written. Like it's just like in the Bible. Like I can't, I can tell you I can tell you about stuff, but I can't tell you where to find it. Does that make sense? It's like, I think we're all given gifts. That wasn't one of mine. Um, Man, I would say, I really don't have one other than I would just say, for me, and I'll use this, right? So I would say, have the heart, faith, and hustle every day of your life, and you will win.
Awesome. Third and final question is what's word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Wow. Dave loved people with all his heart. He gave everything to those around him. He made a difference for not only the people here on this earth, but also the kingdom.
Awesome. All right. You run into someone in the coffee shop, you listen to this, they're all like, okay, we've got to get more disciplined, work harder. What's something we didn't touch on today that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
Well, I think we were talking about, I think as an entrepreneur, I have to be better at compartmentalizing. So, like you mentioned kids, you mentioned family. You got to be able to set your phone down. I'm not great at that. You got to be able to be in the moments. Again, I'm not, that's something I work on. Because it can get away from you, right? It is important to give your wife that time. We have a date night every single week, no matter what. And if it's not Friday, we'll do it another night. But it will get done. It's in stone. Um, Time with your kids. When you have those kids around, it can get quite crazy. But again, be in those moments. So I would say be in the moments as much as you can as an entrepreneur, because life can get away from you. It doesn't mean you won't be successful, but if you lose while you're doing it, your family, your kids, your church, whatever it might be. Um, there's that. Now, I will say this: there is a time where you may have to change some priorities. Like for example, church. For a 2 year period, I looked at my pastor. I said, "I'm gonna need 2 years." I said, "But I promise you, at the end of that 2 years, is gonna be great for the church," which it was. Okay, because I wanted to give, and I just wasn't able to do both. Build what I was trying to build, and also be integral part of the church. Now, did I give? Yes, but I had to change that priority for a while. Does that make sense? So I think you can change priorities without totally getting away from them altogether. That doesn't mean you don't still love to do those things or they don't matter while you're building something.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Guys, let's go out there. Let's change the world one starfish or one person at a time. If we can change one starfish or one person at a time, together, we can change the world. Thanks so much for being on, Dave.
No, it's an honor. Thanks, Angela.